On today's show, the Houston Rockets outlook without Alperen Sengun for the next 2 weeks of action, plus Ime Udoka's trust in Reed Sheppard. It's all coming up right here at Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What is up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now the #1 sports podcast network. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. Be sure to follow along wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Rockets. On today's show, we're going to be taking a look at the Rockets' outlook over this next 10 to 14 days without Alperen Sengun in the lineup, the opportunities this will present for this team, the challenges of playing without Alperen Sengun for this squad for these next 2 weeks, as well as getting into the discussion around Ime Udoka's trust and confidence in Reed Sheppard's ability on the floor, and what Reed Sheppard can and should be providing to this team on a nightly basis. And then we'll wrap things up with Kevin Durant's commentary about the Phoenix Suns scapegoating him for all of their woes last year. A lot to get to in today's episode. First, I want to let you know that today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And as always, thanks so much for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day, whether it's on your way to work, on your lunch break, in the gym. Thank you so much for being an everydayer. All right, so this Rockets team, as we mentioned the other episode, and as Ime Udoka told everybody before the Suns game Monday afternoon, evening, Alperen Sengun sidelined for the next 10 to 14 days is the timetable that we were given. So he'll be reevaluated in 10 to 14 days. It's not a guarantee that he's back in 10 to 14 days, unfortunately. Reevaluated in 10 to 14 days, which could mean that he's back as soon as 10 days. So taking a look at the Rockets' schedule over this next kind of 2 week and some change stretch, thankfully, the Rockets do have a fairly easy slate of games, and in the most optimistic of scenarios, right? So if Alperen Sengun makes it back on day 10, which is what Ime Udoka told media on Monday, that would put him back in time for the matchup with the OKC Thunder on Thursday, January 15th. That would put him at exactly the 10-day threshold, and that's from Tuesday, the 6th, all the way through Thursday, January 15th. That's 10 days right there of recovery time. And I don't even know if Monday was supposed to be included in that timetable or not. So with that being said, that's the most aggressive timeline. And before we get to that OKC game, right, the Rockets have 2 back-to-back games in Portland against the Blazers this week, Wednesday and Friday. Then they have the Sunday rematch against the Sacramento Kings, also on the road, that little West Coast swing that they're doing. So a bunch of late tip-offs this week, unfortunately. All those games should be winnable, right? The Blazers are playing close to 500-ish basketball, but the Rockets should, on paper, even without Alperen Sengun, be able to handle business against each and every one of those teams. The next team coming up would be the Chicago Bulls, and the Bulls are kind of floating around 500 basketball this season. They've had some good wins. They've also had some ugly losses. Kind of just feels like they're playing the same Bulls basketball they've been playing for the last few years. So, like, right at about a 500 level team. On paper, Rockets should be able to beat them. That should be 4 wins in a row, 2 against the Blazers, the Kings, and the Bulls. Now, as we've already learned this season, you can't take these easy wins for granted, right? You got to go in. You still got to take care of business. Rockets cannot walk into any of these games expecting to win them, right? They've got to go in and actually earn those wins. But all of those should be, on paper, wins for this team, even without Alperen Sengun. The rough stretch is where you get into, you have a back-to-back with the Thunder on Thursday night, January 15th, and then the Minnesota Timberwolves come to town Friday, January 16th. So even though it's 2 home games, it's still a back-to-back against 2 of the, one, the best team in the NBA, and then 2, a very, very good Wolves team, a Wolves team that has seen Anthony Edwards do some very despicable things to this Rockets squad over the years. So those 2 games are going to be very difficult matchups, even if Alperen Sengun is healthy, those are tough teams to beat. So getting Alp back for those games would be monumental, or getting him back in time for at least one of them would be huge, because the other dilemma here is that we know that Steven Adams is not currently playing back-to-backs, hasn't been playing back-to-backs, and would likely only be available for one of those games. And one of the things that I would hate to see this team do, I would understand it, but I would hate to see them essentially punt on the OKC game by resting Steve-O that game, because they feel like they have a better chance to win against the Wolves. I understand it from a strategic standpoint, right? You want to give yourself the best shot to win. And if Adams plays versus the Thunder, but doesn't play versus the Wolves, and you wind up losing both games, then you're like, maybe we could have had the Wolves game instead and only taken one loss. I get that. Hopefully it's a situation that they don't even have to juggle if Alperen Sengun is able to make it back in time. And then they have a Sunday early tip-off against the New Orleans Pelicans. And then if we were at the maximum amount of time on the return timetable, it would put him back in time for, because exactly 2 weeks, so 14 days, would put him back in time for the Tuesday, January 20th matchup against Victor Wembanyama and the San Antonio Spurs when they come to town. So a couple very key marquee matchups here that may or may not sync up directly with Alperen Sengun's return timetable. But here's the thing. This Rockets team is going to have to learn how to play without Alperen Sengun for these next 2 weeks. And unfortunately, the numbers when the Rockets don't have Alperen Sengun or Kevin Durant on the floor are pretty freaking abysmal, unfortunately. Let me run the numbers right here. Yeah, they are minus 5.77 points per 100 possessions when neither of those guys are on the court. They have a 114 offensive rating and a 120 defensive rating, thereabouts. I'm not going to get too granular with the numbers. It's not good. They're flat out losing the minutes when you don't have either of Sengun or KD on the floor, as evidenced by the other night, right? This team really struggles to create offense without one of their two stars on the floor. And this is where, I had some of these concerns earlier in the year, and we talked about this, in our season outlook and season preview episodes and whatnot. But this season is going to tell us a lot about Ime Udoka's ability as an offensive head coach, right? What can he create? What can he come up with? What can he design for his players, both with, incorporating his stars in Kevin Durant and Alperen Sengun, but also what does the offense look like when he doesn't have those guys to lean on, right? What can he draw up? What can he create offensively? And some of that is, obviously a lot of it's on the players to execute and actually play well offensively, but Ime has to be able to come up with different, we can't just watch them play, devolve into ISO ball where you watch Jabari and Tari try to take guys off the dribble and, attack from the perimeter, and there's no structure, no hierarchy, none of that, right? They need some guidance in those non-Kevin Durant minutes, and the Rockets basically have one other player on the roster who can consistently and routinely generate high-level offense for himself and for others. And Ime Udoka needs to be able to trust him more moving forward, especially in this stretch without Alperen Sengun. And that is one Reed Sheppard. That's something we're going to talk about coming up here in just a moment. Ime Udoka's trust level in Reed Sheppard. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Fridays already feel different during basketball season, and FanDuel is making them even better. Every Friday night before the games tip off, FanDuel gives fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame, a limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action starts. Fridays from 6 to 7:30 Eastern have become appointment viewing with NBA Happy Hour. It's easy to check the weekly special before tip-off and make a move before the window closes. The timing is perfect right before the games, right before the weekend really starts. So before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. A little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Remember, the best way to help us grow the show is to listen every single day on a podcast platform of your choosing, and then comment, subscribe on YouTube. Also, I meant to mention it in the segment before talking about the outlook without Sengun. The Rockets are 4-2 without Alperen Sengun so far this season. So not a great record, not also a terrible record, right? And I'm counting that Mavericks game that he only played a minute in as a loss because they did lose without him. So this will be a really important stretch ultimately upcoming to see. What was my final total here? Can they go? That's 4 games. Let's say worst case scenario, they don't get Alperen Sengun back. They miss him for all these games. Best case scenario is best case scenario is they just sweep everybody without Alperen Sengun. That's not realistic though, right? Best case scenario, I'm going to say they win all the games they're supposed to win and they lose the 2 against the actual like upper echelon teams, against the Thunder and the Wolves. Better. Yeah, let's say that. That's 5-2 over this next 7-game stretch. If they manage to go 5-2 and they just lose the couple big boy games, or even if they like lose one of the gimme games and they split the pair of the big boy games against the Thunder and Wolves, 5-2 over this next 2 weeks without Alperen Sengun, I think that's a total win for this squad, right? As long as if you're staying relatively far above a 500 level without Alperen Sengun, I think that speaks volumes about what this team has been able to figure out over this next stretch without him, right? And again, this is something that is going to, I feel like, be important for this team down the stretch, because being able to find ways to win in the minutes without Sengun and KD on the floor are going to be so crucial, because there may come a time when the Rockets are just more effective when they have both of those guys on the floor, because we've seen the offense at times when it's just one of them on the floor and there's a lot of double teams and blitzes and traps, right? And then maybe they're not able to take advantage of it. So having both of those guys out there at the same time helps open some different things up. So if they're able to find another look, right, either playing through Ime Thompson, playing through Jabari Smith Jr., playing through Reed Sheppard a bit more in these non-KD Sengun minutes, that gives them another weapon, another way to attack teams in the postseason when the Rockets inevitably get there, right? And they're dealing with defenses that are next level, really trying to slow them down. So where I want to go next with this is this, it's been an interesting experience, we'll say, so far, like the Reed Sheppard experience, because there are, without a doubt, like moments where he looks sensational on the floor, right? Where he looks amazing and he looks like he can carry the offense and he's scorching hot from 3 and he's making all these beautiful reads and all this stuff. And then there's moments where, he has, faded into the background or not been as effective offensively, or his shot's not falling, or he's making, some, we'll call them rookie mistakes, right? Because he's still an incredibly young player, right? I know he's a sophomore technically, but as far as total games played, for all intents and purposes, Reed Sheppard is still a rookie, right? And that's a very tough needle to thread for Ime Udoka and this Rockets coaching staff, wanting to win games, wanting to grow and develop Reed Sheppard, and balancing all of that on a game-by-game basis. And I will maintain this angle for as long as possible, because we've seen enough of the flashes, right? There's been enough success there to know that there is something there with Reed Sheppard, right? The Rockets need to just lean into it. They need to just embrace it, for better or for worse. Like, for example, right, against the Suns, right? Reed Sheppard played a huge chunk of minutes in the first half of that game and then wound up not playing barely any minutes in the second half, right? Instead, Ime Udoka electing to go with the combinations of Aaron Holiday and Josh Okogie, right? And Holiday wound up going 0 for 6 in that game. So I understand Ime's nature and tendency to want to resort to either a more veteran presence, a more veteran player, a more capable defensive piece in certain situations. I get that. But for this Rockets team, for this iteration of this Rockets team to be able to make what we hope is a deep playoff push, they are going to need Reed Sheppard to be a part of this group. Like they can't do it without Reed Sheppard, right? The best version of this Rockets team, I'll take that back. When this Rockets team is playing like a top 5 defense, and you've got Alperen Sengun and Kevin Durant playing like the superstars that they are, this team can beat anybody. They can. They're that good, right? And those two guys are so singularly talented on offense, right? That they're both kind of an offense unto themselves. They can carry you for more or less offensively, right? But there are going to be games where one or both of those guys struggle, right? There are going to be games and matchups where the defenses are so next level that you're not going to be able to just rely on those guys to get you your wins. You're going to need other guys to be able to step up offensively. You're going to need other guys to make contributions. You're going to need other guys to be able to initiate the offense. That's kind of the big thing, right? Is this Rockets team, all the offense has to be initiated by one of those two guys. And we've seen little pockets where, Amin is able to do some initiation, where Reed's able to do some initiation. But the sooner that Ime just embraces it and really, I'm not saying he has to completely hand over the keys to Reed Sheppard. I'm not saying he has to throw him into the starting lineup and give him 35 plus minutes a night. But the inconsistency in his playing time, in his role, in his minutes, right, has got to be difficult for Reed Sheppard to kind of get a real feel for the game, a real rhythm going. And at the end of the day, the numbers bear it out, right? The Rockets are significantly better, right? They flat out win the minutes when Reed Sheppard is on the floor, and he unlocks even more for this team when he's out there in tandem with Kevin Durant and Alperen Sengun, right? He makes life easier for them with his spacing, with his ability to move off ball. They talk about it all the time on the broadcast, right? Hollins brings it up all the time. Guys just standing around, guys not cutting, guys not moving without the basketball. Reed Sheppard is one of the best players on the team at moving without the basketball, right? So when you have like Reed Sheppard out there relocating for wide open three-pointers, playing off the gravity of KD and Sengun, it helps unlock this Rockets offense. Now we're talking about this next stretch without Alperen Sengun, right? And that's where I think it presents an opportunity for Ime to really kind of extend the leash, I guess, on Reed Sheppard a little bit. And it's an opportunity for Reed to really take hold of this offense and kind of try to make it his own, because there are going to be plenty of minutes with no Kevin Durant on the floor where the Rockets need some offense, right? And this is an opportunity not only for Reed Sheppard, but also for Amin Thompson, right? Like, it's an opportunity for both of them, but Ime doesn't have a trust issue with Amin Thompson, right? Amin Thompson will be out there playing 40 plus minutes a night regardless. The trust comes in with Reed Sheppard, right? Because can Ime get past his block of like defense first, right? Got to be good on defense, right? Can he get past that and allow Reed Sheppard to take his lumps, right? And we've seen the Rockets try to, make some defensive adjustments and add some wrinkles and schemes to be able to protect Reed Sheppard and play things a little bit differently when he's on the floor. And I think that needs to continue, right? That's an encouraging trend, because at the end of the day, there isn't a single other player on this Rockets roster that can provide what Reed Sheppard can provide to this team when his confidence is on and when he's rolling. Now, because he's a young player, inconsistency is going to be there. He's going to have up games and down games, and it's about minimizing the lows, right? It's about getting him to a point where he's consistent enough that you feel like come the playoffs, you can rely on Reed Sheppard in those tight moments, in those crunch time situations, that you can trust him to be on the floor in those biggest moments. And so this is an opportunity for Ime to lean further into it, to see what Reed Sheppard can provide to this team offensively in the absence of Alperen Sengun, right? Let him steer, let him create, let him get into the nitty gritty with the offense. And same thing for Amin Thompson, right? Let them both, they're both going to have to step up in a big way in these non-Kevin Durant minutes for this Rockets team to not flounder over this next 2-week stretch. So I'll be interested to see how Ime Udoka does, balancing the minutes, balancing his trust in Reed Sheppard over these next couple weeks. Coming up, we're going to get into Kevin Durant's commentary on his former team, the Phoenix Suns. Says that he was scapegoated by Phoenix. We're going to hear from KD himself and then share some thoughts on that to round things out. We'll get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by Rocket Money. Let's be real. Managing your finances can feel overwhelming between subscriptions you forgot about, bills that keep going up, and trying to figure out where all your money actually goes each month. It's easy to feel like you're losing control. And who has time to track every transaction or hunt down hidden fees? That's where Rocket Money comes in, the personal finance app that helps you take control. It finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can actually grow your savings. Look, when I first started using Rocket Money, I was shocked to see that I had forgotten about a couple different subscriptions, right? I was a little embarrassed about things that it's the worst feeling, right? You're like, oh, I'll cancel this. And then you see it hit your bank account. And then you tell yourself, oh, I'll do it next month. And then next month never comes around, right? Rocket Money was great for cleaning up subscriptions that I wasn't using anymore. So let Rocket Money help you reach your financial goals faster. Join at rocketmoney.com/locked-on. That's rocketmoney.com/locked-on. rocketmoney.com/locked-on. Today's episode is also brought to you by PrizePicks. Whether you're starting a new routine or jumping into player projections for the first time, trying something new can feel like a challenge, but with PrizePicks, it always feels good to be right. With high-pressure football matchups every weekend and elite hoops action almost every night, the action never slows down, and PrizePicks lets you stay in control. PrizePicks is the daily fantasy app that makes watching sports even more exciting by letting you build lineups based on player projections, no drafts, no waiting, just pick more or less and play your way. Getting started on PrizePicks is quick and simple. The app is super easy to navigate. You get flexible options like Flex Play, where you can still get paid even if one pick misses. So download the PrizePicks app today. Use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, where it's good to be right. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Now, after the Rockets-Suns game Monday night, Kevin Durant had some thoughts about his former team that he wound up sharing. He basically jumped up and he didn't just like do a one-off and then call it a day. He was asked a follow-up question and then elaborated on his thoughts, but he essentially talked about, Phoenix being a place that he didn't want to leave, and, his first time that he feels that he was truly kicked out of a place, that he felt like he'd been scapegoated for the issues that they had as a team. And that it felt really good to hit a game-winning shot against, his former team. You play with a little chip on your shoulder against your former team, especially when they trade you, is what he wound up saying. And then he had a follow-up where he was asked more about it. And this is what he had to say in his follow-up.
And so much has happened since then. How were you weighing the emotions of that shot, knowing it was coming against them?
Like I was just telling him right before you walked in, literally right before you walked in, Dwayne, we was talking about this. It feels good to play against a team that booted you out the building and scapegoated you for all the problems that they had. And it hurt because I put all my effort and love and care towards the Suns and the Phoenix area and Arizona in general. But that's just the business. That's the name of the game. And, so when you play against a team, you got a chip on your shoulder. You don't want it to get too big, have too big of a chip, and it gets in the way of the game with my teammates. But in the back of my mind, it's there. It's nothing but love for the players, but I want to beat that team. I want to show them that I still got some juice in the tank, even though I'm old. I still can play. I feel like every player has that mentality playing against their former team. I don't think it's malicious in any way towards them, but just as a competitor, you want to go out there and beat them, and then to beat them on a game-winning shot like that, But by the time I get home tonight, I probably won't even remember it. I will remember, but I'll try my best to forget about it and move on to the next game.
Thank you. Honestly, more like kind of a healthy mentality from KD, right? Like, I don't really take any exception to what he said. Suns fans are like all in a tizzy about what KD had to say, right? They're feeling like, all kinds of angry or whatever. And I don't really get it. Like, the situation in Phoenix is... whatever, it's Rockets on the Phoenix pick, so that's awesome. But like, looking as an outsider looking into that situation, right? They made a championship level move trading for Kevin Durant, but they gutted their team and they gutted their depth in order to be able to make that move, right? So they get KD, but they gutted their team to do it. They only played a half season with Chris Paul still there, and then they flipped Chris Paul for Bradley Beal, right? And then at that point, you had three guys whose all their number one skill, right? Their elite skill on the floor is to get buckets in Durant, Booker, and Bradley Beal. And that big three did not complement each other very well, right? And then the supporting cast pieces around that big three, right? Guys like Yusuf Nurkic, Plumlee, Eubanks, Keita Bates-Diop, Tyus Jones, like there was not a great supporting cast of characters around those guys. And then Beal's, in and out with injury, Booker's missing time, KD's missing time. Like, that Suns team was dysfunctional for a lot of reasons beyond Kevin Durant. And here's the kicker is they were 3-17 last year when KD didn't play. Like that's it. That's they were 3-17 when KD did not play. They were approximately a 500 team when Kevin Durant did play last season, and then they were 3-17 when he didn't play. So that tells you almost everything you need to know about last year's Phoenix Suns team, at least, right? And the issues that they were dealing with. But even beyond that, right? Like, think back to the original reporting around KD and the trade deadline last year. The Suns were trying to trade KD without even talking to him about it, right? They were trying to deal KD to the Warriors under the table. They were like fielding calls and trying to figure out, how can we get Jimmy Butler in Phoenix? Because that's what we need. We need Jimmy. We don't need KD. First off, as a side note, Jimmy looks totally washed this season. So like Phoenix better count their blessings that they didn't try to finesse a trade for Jimmy Butler, and that also that Golden State didn't want to bring KD back, right? Like which is clearly a mistake on Golden State's behalf, because Jimmy Butler does not look the same Jimmy Butler. He looks like his legs have finally caught up, or all the years of playing for Tom Thibodeau has finally caught up to him. He does not look like the same Jimmy this season. And so for Phoenix as an organization to try and like go behind KD's back to try and trade him without talking to him about it first, without being upfront about him, without talking to them about, the direction of the franchise, the struggles, all this stuff. Like, yeah, if I was KD, I'd feel kind of slighted too, honestly. So like, I get exactly where he's coming from, and I really don't have any issue with anything that he said. And the fact that he went on to kind of clarify what he was saying about playing with a chip on your shoulder, about wanting to get that win against your former team, about the shot, all that, having all that in the back of your mind, but also not letting it, disrupt you or your team, right? Not letting the chip get too big on your shoulder. Like, everything that KD has said and done since coming to Houston, like, how can you not love this guy? Like, I don't know if there's going to be like a coin, like the other shoe drops moment or whatever, where things get really bad and things get toxic. And then suddenly it's like, this is the other side of having KD on your team. So far, it's been nothing but an incredible experience. Like, he is a bona fide superstar. He's very candid and honest with the media. He goes out and he balls out every single night. On nights where he does struggle or where the shot's not going and it's, a rough night, he accepts responsibility for his job in either not performing well enough or not lifting his teammates up enough. Like, he's not one to shy away from the tough times, right? He doesn't ignore interviews. He doesn't storm out of the building unhappy after a loss or whatever. Like, he owns up to the moment. He does everything that you would want a star player to be able to do. And so I think when we look back on this, like, again, just as far as like the scapegoating stuff with Phoenix, I think Phoenix did KD kind of wrong. I think ultimately they did him right by sending him to one of his preferred destinations, right? So he got to Houston, a place that he wanted to be at, a place that he, is happy to be at now and is grateful to be here, right? We have the line on the soundboard. I'm not going to run it again because I haven't trimmed it down yet, but he loves repping the Houston Rockets, all that. So that's incredible. But the fact that he was invested, right? He wanted to be in Phoenix, and he had no issues with being in Phoenix, right? He was ready to probably retire a member of the Phoenix Suns. And then when things went sideways with that organization, and when they, betrayed him and kind of broke that trust, then he wanted out, right? And so now the Rockets are going to be the ones to reap the benefits of that reward, because KD is still absolutely playing like a top 10 player in the association. And when we look back on this, right, I really do think when we look back on this, this is going to be one of the most probably win-win trades in NBA history, because the Rockets got exactly what they needed in Kevin Durant, a true number one scorer, an alpha, a go-to guy. And the Suns themselves got a culture starter in Dillon Brooks, right? A guy who can come in and help revamp the culture, helping their new head coach, Jordan Ott, right? Establish the new Phoenix Suns culture, bringing along the young guys, right? Being an example, giving that, defensive piece alongside Booker. And they still have only gotten one game out of Jalen Green, right? Jalen Green's going to be an important piece for that Suns team moving forward. Now, TBD on what Jalen's career turns into, right? Will he ever blossom into a consistent enough scoring threat to be an all-star caliber player? Who knows, right? We don't know what Jalen's career arc is going to look like, but he's another really fantastic piece that they really haven't even been able to enjoy yet as a part of that KD trade. So I think it ultimately worked out for both sides, but I don't blame KD for feeling some kind of way about how Phoenix handled the entire situation. So I'm curious your thoughts on everything that we talked about in this episode. Give me your thoughts on Kevin Durant talking about the Suns scapegoating him. Give me your record prediction for this team over these next couple of weeks without Alperen Sengun. Drop your record prediction in the comments. What about Ime Udoka's trust level in Reed Sheppard? Want your thoughts on that as well. All your thoughts in the YouTube comments. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.